What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and we have the final preseason game of the calendar tonight against the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. And listen, this is not going to be a time where we see a lot of the starters. Aaron Glenn has already talked about that. As such, there are still some things to discuss here, both in terms of depth chart, roster spots. But first, I do want to talk about something that's a positive, and that is that the Jets are getting healthy. Remember, in that preseason game against the Giants last week, there were a lot of members of the starting unit that did not play, and most of them are back at practice, and that is a beautiful thing for this week and moving forward, that we are getting healthy as we approach the regular season. So look, Sauce, Quinnen Williams, Jermaine Johnson, and even our rookie third-round pick, Azareye'h Thomas, were back in practice this week. And listen to what Aaron Glenn said about it. He goes, all I can say is, whoa. 11 is out there. That's Jermaine Johnson. And he's rushing the passer. He runs right by me, and I was like, wind, whoosh. And then you see 95. That's Quinnen Williams, by the way. And he goes, it felt good. It felt really good. Just to remind you, right? Like, Will McDonald had his breakout season last year, and that was with Jermaine Johnson not there for most of the season. And this entire unit, right, under Steve Wilks at least, under Aaron Glenn, has not been there, healthy and fully ready. We have not seen the full-on potential, especially around these kind of dual pass rushers that I'm talking about, Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald, under the teaching and tutelage of Wilks and Aaron Glenn. And honestly, sometimes you guys say that I'm optimistic, right? But if you look at the Jets defense, there is literally Pro Bowlers at every level. You talk about the front, where Quinnen Williams is one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL and respected as such. I believe in this pass rushing duo of Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. The linebacker level, right? Quincy Williams, Jamian Sherwood. These are guys that lead the league in tackles, or top 10 in tackles. These are Pro Bowl caliber players. And then in the secondary, right? Obviously, there is Sauce Gardner, an all-pro, a multiple-time all-pro, rated as the best cornerback in the league, paid as the best cornerback in the league. And then we've been seeing positive reports about guys learning under Aaron Glenn, guys like Brandon Stevens, guys like A.Z. Thomas, right? Cisco signed as a free agent, Malachi Moore, who can contribute. So I really do believe that there is reason to think that this Jets defensive unit is going to be one of the better ones in the NFL. And that's part of why this identity, right? Not only the physicality, but we're going to run the ball. We're going to have time of possession. We're going to be efficient in the passing game. And that is going to be our formula. But as it relates to tonight's preseason finale against the Philadelphia Eagles, Aaron Glenn has said, as is the case with most teams in the NFL, that a lot of the starters are going to not be in action, right? He said, and I quote, a good amount of starters won't play in this game. I won't get into the who, but it gives us a chance to look at some of our young guys and give them plenty of playing time so we can evaluate them. This is going to be the last chance for a lot of guys. So here are some of the position groups that I'm looking at. For the wide receivers, we've talked about this. B. Smitty. We've talked about Quentin Skinner, right? And how I think they may have leapfrogged wide receivers of the old guard, like Malachi Corley and Xavier Gibson. So let's see if Brandon Smith and Quentin Skinner continue to impress. On the defensive line, there's been that idea of who's going to be next to Quinnen Williams, right? Jay Tufele, remember, against Green Bay, really popped. But there's others that I want to see. Byron Coward, Derek Nottie, who has not really showed much. And of course, Leonard Taylor, who kind of flashed at the end of last year, looked good in that game against Green Bay, along with Jay Tufele, to kind of see what that rotation is going to look like. Is it going to be Leonard Taylor and Tufele? Can Coward and Nottie sort of make an appearance here and threaten, move up the depth chart? I think that's interesting, right? And the running back room. Aaron Glenn has talked about his running backs, how much he loves all of his running backs. We know there is going to be that three-headed monster that he keeps talking about. We know about Breece Hall. We know about Braylon Allen. We know about Isaiah Davis, right? But I think that fourth, fifth running back, if they carry that many, is going to be really interesting. I believe Donovan Edwards deserves a spot on this roster. We've also seen guys like Keenan Wanu be beasts in the return game and as a running back. How do they play out? And they will probably get a ton of snaps in this game. And then I think another position that's interesting, especially if Justin Fields doesn't play, Tyrod Taylor is down, right? We're gonna see a ton of Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook. This is probably going to be a battle, right? We know about Tyrod and we know he's down for a little while. So this is gonna be a battle for QB3 on this roster, and maybe even the backup at the beginning of the season if Tyrod Taylor is down, right? I have said I believe Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook both deserve to be either on the 53-man roster or on the practice squad because they have shown that they can move the offense, but they've also shown that they have similar character traits and athletic abilities to Justin Fields. And I think that's very important because you want to be able to still have the whole playbook open if we need Adrian Martinez, if we need Brady Cook. So I do believe those two quarterbacks are fighting for spots on the 53, maybe the practice squad. But again, all of these guys are fighting not only for spots with the Jets, but as we always say, they're putting stuff on tape because there's going to be a lot of cuts, and maybe a guy like, I don't know, Derek Nottie, right, gets cut by the Jets, but then picked up somewhere else. They all are trying to put their best foot forward, their best tape out there, because next week is going to be huge with cut downs and, other signings. There's going to be some shuffling at the bottom of the roster. One other thing that I am looking for in this preseason game against the Eagles, besides some of those kind of position groups and some of those players that I'm telling you about, is if the offensive line can do it again, right? This offensive line, in my opinion, has been the highlight and the headline of training camp of this offseason. We've talked about what the offensive line can do for the floor of a team, right? Raise that floor, what it can do for a quarterback, right? And their accuracy and their protection, what it can do for a run game. And this Jets O-line has been impressive, moving the line of scrimmage against the Green Bay Packers, right? Running for over 140 yards in 10 plays in a row drives against the New York Giants. And I think that's going to be another test, depending on how many of the starters on the O-line play against the Philadelphia Eagles. Listen to what John Simpson had to say first about his guard teammate, Elijah Vera Tucker. He goes, AVT is a dog, man. He's one of those guys where a couple of years from now, people can be saying, did you watch that film on AVT? He's real technically sound. I watch his film to get my game better. He's one of the guys who's a leader in this room, and he'll continue to be a great leader. I highlight him because he's another homegrown top draft pick, the same as Tippmann, the same as Membu, the same as Fashanu, right? And John Simpson, who is the free agent additive, has kind of seen that AVT as a leader. By the way, I think AVT is also in position very soon, maybe next offseason, to get an extension himself. But again, about the identity of this, right? He says, I think the identity of this team is physicality, no matter what play it is, run, pass, whatever. I think the coach does a great job of telling that's what he wants. If that means we got to run the ball 12 times, 15 times in a row, then that's what it is. I am ready for it. And I think, again, establishing that as kind of this calling card of this new culture of the green and white continues to be important. And quite frankly, Philly is a good test. Remember, last week I said that I thought the Giants were a good test because they had a good front. Dexter Lawrence, Thibodeau, Abdul Carter. We saw about that chip block on Abdul Carter, right? And Twitter went ablaze. I don't know if you saw that. But I want to see if we could do it against the champion Eagles because they have a good front as well. Last year, their run defense, the Eagles, was top 10 in yards allowed, yards per carry, success rate against, not allowing explosive runs, not tackling well, not allowing avoided tackles, right? So I want to see if this O-line can continue to move the line of scrimmage, kind of dominate like we have seen all preseason long. I think that is one other thing I want to look at here in this preseason finale because a lot of these starters are not going to be there. But here's the thing. I hope we get through it injury-free because we are, in fact, getting healthy. And that is the biggest, deal as we go into week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. As always, thank you so much for watching these videos, liking these videos, engaging with me in the comments. And if you want to become a Jets Latest Insider, click on that button on the description. You can become a Jets Latest Insider, get exclusive content, other kind of perks that we're going to be giving throughout the football season. It's going to be a very exciting 2025. And let's see what some of you had to say. So GSD Mickey 2976 says, I like Brady Cook. You can see him getting better and do what they are telling him to do. Again, I think Martinez and Cook both deserve spots on this roster or the practice squad, and this is going to be a big game for both of them, their final chance to impress, to see who's going to be QB3. I do think Brady Cook can stick in this league. He has shown some athleticism, and remember, it was Membu blocking for him for years in college as well. Old Dave, big shout out to Old Dave, a regular, maybe going to become a Jets latest insider, says, no one is talking about time of possession, but the Jets are going to be clock monsters, and with their defense, that should keep them in many games. I agree. That's why I talked about it. I want to see if they can do that. I agree. That's why we talked about kind of Justin Fields being efficient in the pass game with this run game, right? That's the kind of team the Jets are going to be. And remember, I told you, who were the teams that led the league in rushing last year? The Baltimore Ravens, quality contender. The Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl winner. The Washington Commanders, NFC Championship game. Other playoff teams like Tampa and Detroit, who we are really modeling after. So absolutely, that time of possession is going to be part of the formula for the Jets, Jets. And then JV Bronx DP 1844 says, nice video. Thanks for the update. Go Jets. Thank you to everybody, even the new subscribers and watchers here. I try to bring you the real. I try to give you real stats, real quotes, real insights on what to expect here for the green and white, all the way back since nailing the draft months ago. So hopefully you have found the channel. And remember, tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. And if you want more from me, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, I am also the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on Sirius XM, channel 87, the fantasy channel. Because listen, it is draft season and it is time for you to win your leagues and win that cash. I've been in this game for over a decade, giving people fantasy advice, analyzing football. And so if you need that kind of help, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Spittin' Speeds, or even become an insider. And those are some of the perks and some of the additional things we're going to be doing this season. All right. But FTN is a great website, rankings, data, tools to become a better fantasy player and a better sports bettor. So keep that on your radar as well. But if you're down for the green and white, Jets latest is the place to be. We will see what happens in this finale against the Philadelphia Eagles. Hopefully we come out of it healthy. And then next week, there's going to be cut downs. There's going to be some shuffling at the bottom of the roster as we get ready for the regular season opener against Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Have a great weekend, everybody. That'll do it for this episode. We will be back next week for sure. But for now, we out of here. Peace.